This is Radio 84 MHz, broadcasting from the bustling streets and hidden alleys of Vietnam. You are tuning into the frequency of authentic stories and unfiltered vibe.
Today, we follow Mark, a Wall Street shark who arrived in Saigon convinced that the chaos of street food is a sign of economic immaturity. He believes efficiency and scale are everything, and banh mi is nothing more than a cheap, transient snack. But a routine market inspection would expose his billion-dollar blind spot. Presenting American investor Banh Mi, the unscalable snack, and the $130 million shock. Don't forget to subscribe for more hidden gems. And tell us below, has a simple meal ever changed your view on a country's entire economy? Now, let's listen. I am Mark, a venture capitalist who has dedicated his entire life to building business models that are scalable and systematic. I came to Vietnam with a crystal-clear objective to find Asia's next fast-moving consumer goods FMCG brand, a food business that could replicate its formula, standardize its processes, and expand globally like McDonald's, Starbucks, or KFC. But every time my Vietnamese partner Hung took me to scout what he called culinary potential, I felt disappointed and, frankly, arrogant. "Mark, you have to try this," Hung said, a big smile on his face leading me to a chaotic corner. The noise of horns, the smell of frying oil, the chatter and the clatter of knives, a whole street food Vietnam circus was playing out right in front of us. "What is this?" I frowned. The harsh sunlight highlighted the street dust and the low plastic stools. A woman was hunched over her hands, swiftly cutting meat, slicing vegetables, and stuffing it all into a baguette. Banh mi, the queen of street food. It has everything: flavor, history, and most importantly, very low cost, Hung enthusiastically described. I took a step back, dodging a motorbike that zipped past. "Hung, I get that it's cheap. I get that it might be good, but we are talking about the potential to become a billion-dollar company. Just look at this." I raised my phone, trying to capture the scene where the woman was using her bare hands to arrange the vegetables in the sandwich, then immediately switching hands to take cash from a customer. The core problem isn't the flavor, Hung. The problem is the lack of control. Tell me, what is the hygiene index? What is the holding temperature for the meat fillings? Does she adhere to a standard operating procedure SOP? There is no system whatsoever. My voice was firm and didactic, like a lecture at Wharton. "Mark, this is their culture," Hung tried to explain. I scoffed, a smile I knew was irritating. Culture is not a business model. Culture makes for a great story, but it's not a scale-up strategy. Hung, on Wall Street, we call this artisan risk, manual risk. She makes it, well, she sells out. But can she operate 100 stalls, 1,000 stalls in Berlin or Tokyo? Absolutely not. I pointed to the pile of baguettes stacked in an uncovered basket. Who supplies the bread? Who makes the pâté? What is the volatility in the cost of the raw ingredients? This entire process relies on personal trust and family tradition. There is no big data, no quality control QC, no GPS-tracked supply chain. It's too fragile, too vulnerable. It's a latent sanitation risk and an inherent business risk. In truth, my feeling wasn't just skepticism, it was mild contempt. I saw a country full of potential, hard-working, dynamic people, but held back by small-scale, disorganized business thinking. I've watched the Vietnam vlog and foreigner reaction videos on YouTube where people praise Vietnamese food and the kindness of the locals, but I am here to invest money, not to shoot a travel documentary. I need numbers and systemization. Mark, addressing Hung commandingly. "Hung, eliminate all investment ideas in street food from the list. We are looking for an automated instant noodle factory, a logistics system run by AI. I want to see stainless steel digital dashboards and ISO 22000 standards, something that can talk to investors in New York. This banh mi is just a cheap snack, and it will eventually fade out as Vietnam gets richer and the people demand greater safety and standardization." Hung sighed, his eyes showing disappointment, but remaining professional. "I understand your perspective, Mark. But do you remember what you once said? Where there is a problem, there is an opportunity. If you see chaos, perhaps you haven't seen the hidden system that holds it all together." Hidden system. That's poetic language, Hung. I need spreadsheets and charts, not poetry. I sneered. If I were to invest in this, I would have to write in my prospectus, "We trust the knife skills of Mrs. 2 in District 10. No thank you. I'd be fired instantly. I looked around the bustling market where people were laughing, exchanging small change and enjoying their meal. Life in Vietnam might be easygoing, friendly, I thought to myself, but business is a battlefield. A battlefield requires discipline and rules, and Banh Mi has neither. I turned my back on the Banh Mi stall. In my mind, the Banh Mi deal was dead, or so I thought. I tried to forget about that Banh Mi. I moved on to meetings with electronics manufacturers and fintech startups, things I could label as scalable and disruptive. But life in Ho Chi Minh doesn't easily conform to Wall Street logic. 2 days after that street survey, I got a mild case of food poisoning. Ironically, it wasn't from Banh Mi or any street food, but from a newly opened fine dining restaurant whose international standards I had trusted. Naturally, I blamed the general laxity regarding sanitation here. Lying sick in my hotel room, I felt terrible, both physically and mentally. I had wasted 2 valuable workdays. Hung visited me that afternoon, bringing an electrolyte drink and a small pastry. "Are you okay?" Mark Hung asked, looking concerned. "Not at all, Hung. I'm wasting time and money, to be precise." The lesson learned. Invest in things with standardization, not in culinary adventures. Precisely for that reason, I want you to visit a place. Not a restaurant, not a stall. A place you would never think of. I'm not in the mood for another colorful, real-life Vietnam vlog about life in Vietnam, Hung. "I need an audited financial report," I grumbled. "This is a physical financial report. It relates to Banh Mi. You said Banh Mi lacked a system. I'm going to show you where that system is born," Hung said, his tone more insistent than usual. I reluctantly agreed. The next morning, Hung took me to a light industrial area on the outskirts of the city. I expected an old, smelly industrial plant, but when I stepped inside, I was hit by a shock. This was a food processing facility called Central Oven X, the place that supplied the main ingredients, like pate Vietnamese sausage and sauces, to hundreds of small Banh Mi stalls in the southern region. The entire floor was sparkling clean, tiled like a laboratory. I saw workers wearing sterile uniforms, masks, hats, and hairnets. Areas were clearly delineated: live area, raw ingredients, processing area, formula optimization, and ready area, QC, and vacuum sealing. There was no chaos, only discipline. I thought the grandmothers made their own pate using a stone mortar. I blurted out my initial skepticism, replaced by astonishment. Hung chuckled. "They still make it themselves, Mark, but with new rules. This central oven is managed by a family who's been making Banh Mi for 4 generations, but the younger generation studied food science abroad." He led me to a temperature check area. "You asked about quality control QC. Take a look." A young technician was using equipment to measure the pH and temperature of the meat filling. A large screen displayed charts tracking the parameters: sausage filling temperature 6.8 degrees Celsius, liver pate pH level 6.2. Every batch of ingredients, even the traditional pate, must pass minimum microbiological checks. They take random samples from 10% of the daily batch, Hung explained. They adhere to higher standards than many international restaurant chains. Why? Because their reputation is built on local trust that eating from a stall is safe. This was my breaking point. I had completely and wrongly underestimated them. But the supply chain. How are these ingredients transported to hundreds of sidewalk stalls in a just-in-time JIT manner to ensure freshness without spoilage? I challenged. Hung took me to the back lot where a fleet of motorbikes and small trucks were being loaded. "Here's the interesting part, Mark. They don't use Oracle's warehouse management software, WMS. They use a system of trust and local efficiency." He pointed to an older woman jotting notes in an ancient notebook. "She is the coordinator. She doesn't need GPS or AI. She knows exactly how many baguettes Mrs. 2 in District 10 needs at 6 a.m. and Central Oven X can prepare and deliver it within 30 minutes because they have 15 secret collection points across Ho Chi Minh. That's not logistics, Hung. That's art." I shook my head. No, Mark. That's decentralized logistics driven by a personal network. It's incredibly cost-effective and zero waste because they don't have to pay for huge warehouses or expensive software. This is the marriage of tradition and capital efficiency. Hung opened the door of a small cold storage room. Inside were vacuum-sealed vegetables, clearly labeled with dates. We don't just supply pâté. We supply vegetables from contract farms in Dalat. The sidewalk Banh Mi shops get pre-cut fresh vegetables every morning. That not only ensures hygiene but also helps Mrs. Tu with prep time optimization, allowing her to sell more sandwiches during peak hours. I stood speechless. I had seen the chaos. But I was wrong. I didn't see the hidden efficiency. The external manual labor was just a facade for an incredibly sophisticated, self-regulating supply chain system operating underneath. My prejudice that without stainless steel and digital dashboards quality was impossible was shattered by the truth. The Vietnamese had built a high-speed, low-cost fresh food supply chain capable of QC adjusted to local needs far exceeding what I thought was possible in a developing country. Mark, speaking to himself, my God, this isn't a snack. This is a logistics masterpiece disguised as street food. It's a foreigner shock in broad daylight. I watched the Vietnam vlogs and only saw the smiles and the delicious food, but missed the intelligent business blueprint behind it. I was completely wrong. My initial arrogance melted away, replaced by an uncomfortable humility. I had been taught a lesson in capital efficiency by a sidewalk Banh Mi that I would never have learned on Wall Street. I had been crushed not by a major competitor but by a sandwich, more accurately by the so-called Central Oven X, where I witnessed how the Vietnamese transformed manual labor into a supply chain so incredibly sophisticated and efficient it defied belief. After that trip, I spent an entire afternoon re-watching Vietnam vlogs and foreigner reaction reviews about Vietnamese food. I looked at the smiles of the vendors, the long lines of waiting customers, and wondered, how could I have missed a fully functioning system of cache data and fresh ingredients operating with such astonishing capital efficiency? I had thought that life in Vietnam was easygoing, friendly, but their business operations were amateur. I was wrong. Their culture wasn't a barrier. It was the cultural moat, protecting a powerful business model. Hung noticed the shift in me. He knew it was time for the final piece of evidence. Mark, you've seen the skeleton of Banh Mi, Hung said in our private meeting room at a skyscraper in Ho Chi Minh. Now I'll show you its DNA. If you want to talk in Wall Street language, we're going to talk IPO and big data. He introduced me to a young man named Vin. Vin wasn't wearing an expensive suit. He was in a polo shirt and thick-rimmed glasses, looking more like a software engineer than someone in the food industry. Mark Vin is the founder of a food tech startup here. They specialize in recipe optimization using technology, Hung explained. I started to feel intrigued. This was something I understood. Vin didn't waste time. He opened a presentation file titled Banh Mi Decentralized Food Ecosystem $1 billion Potential. Bin. In fluent English, Mr. Mark, you were right to say Banh Mi lacks McDonald's-style standardization. But that's a fallacy. We are not trying to create 100% identical flavor profiles. We create consistency within cultural variation tolerance. Sounds very academic, I scoffed. In other words, close enough. No, Mark. It's strategic. Banh Mi in Hanoi must taste different from Banh Mi in Saigon. Mrs. Tu's pâté recipe must retain her traditional flavor DNA, otherwise her customers will leave. So how do you scale that tradition? Vin switched to a complex chart. We analyze over 5,000,000 daily transactions from delivery apps and micropos systems within our network. We don't just track volume. We track ingredient substitution rate. Do customers prefer more meatballs over fried eggs on a rainy day? Do foreigner tourists request 70% less chili than local customers in District 1? We are building the real-time flavor map of Ho Chi Minh. My mouth felt dry. I used to manage big data campaigns for Starbucks, but this data collected from tiny street transactions was astonishingly granular and personal. This is proprietary data, Vin stated. International QSR chains spend months organizing focus groups. We have instant feedback from hundreds of thousands of transactions daily. We know exactly where to adjust the sauce's salinity or the bread's crispiness in which neighborhood within the next 24 hours. This is data logistics at a micro level. Then Vin revealed the truth that delivered the real shock. You asked about QC. How does mass-produced pâté taste like grandma's pâté? The answer lies in advanced enzyme technology and microfermentation processes. Vin continued. He showed me a graphic image of a production system. We worked with food scientists to pinpoint the exact enzymes needed to maintain the traditional structure and flavor of these sausages and pâté, even when produced in large quantities in a safe, certified facility. We then supply these micro-standardized enzyme packets to Central Oven X so they can maintain their artisanal touch without the sanitation risk. This is how we bring tradition into the 21st century. I lean back. This wasn't cooking. This was strategic food science. They had solved the food industry's most intractable problem, how to scale up without losing the soul of the product. So, who owns this technology? I asked, my voice slightly shaky. Multiple companies, Mark. But they all operate within a semi-anonymous ecosystem. We call it Cooperation X, Hung replied. These companies don't want a public IPO right now. They are accumulating assets and data. Vin switched to the final slide, which contained only a number and a line of text. The text conservative estimate. Quick IPO option. The number $130, $0,000. This is the minimum intrinsic valuation estimate for this entire hidden logistics and technology network, should we decide to go public with just 1/3 of it as a single platform. Company providing services to other Banh Mi chains, Vin, explained. It includes the value of the flavor map and a proprietary enzyme technology. I stared at the number. $130 million. A network I had dismissed as cheap snack food and unsystematic had a starting valuation equivalent to an entry-level Series A software startup in Silicon Valley. I thought it was a risk, I stammered, feeling like a naive American. Exactly, Mark Hung concluded, his face serious. You saw the sanitation risk on the surface, but you missed the hidden strategic asset. Banh Mi isn't a food. It's an efficiency software encoded into food running on a highly engaged user network. You saw the bicycle, but you missed the jet engine inside. The feeling of being overwhelmed was terrible. I had spent decades searching for innovation, and it was right here, perfectly disguised under a crispy baguette crust. I wasn't just wrong about a sandwich. I was wrong about the entire business philosophy of a nation. My prejudice that Vietnam only excels at copying had been defeated by the opposite truth. They created a unique model protected by their culture. I didn't sleep that night. The $130 million figure and the phrase consistency within cultural variation tolerance kept spinning in my head. I am an American investor who prides himself on seeing hidden value, yet I was completely blind to a sophisticated business system disguised by simplicity. My prejudice, just a cheap snack food lacking a system. The truth. It is a decentralized food blockchain, highly efficient, protected by culture and big data. The next morning, I called an urgent video conference with the C-suite of my venture capital fund in New York. They were expecting a report on investing in the high-tech QSR chain, the one I had promised would be the next McDonald's of Asia. I sat in front of the screen with Hung and Vin beside me. Good morning, team. I began, my voice slightly shaky but resolute. I found the opportunity we've been looking for, but it is not what we expected. Charlie, our CFO, raised an eyebrow. We see you're in Vietnam, Mark. Did you find that AI-powered restaurant chain yet? I took a deep breath. This was my first public confession and my moment of personal transformation. Mark. Strong voice looking straight into the camera. Over the past 3 weeks, I have fundamentally misjudged the potential of the Vietnamese food market. I was looking for stainless steel robots and digital dashboards. I overlooked the true value built on trust and generational efficiency. I have to admit my mistake. I came here with the arrogance of a Western investor who believes only our model can achieve scale and standardization. I looked at the sidewalk Banh Mi and saw sanitation risk and disorganization. I called it the unscalable snack. I paused, letting my words sink in. Charlie and his team were silent. But that is a perfect disguise. Banh Mi is not a snack. It is a superior business strategy. I pulled up Vince's presentation slide. The title, The Banh Mi Ecosystem Culture as Capital. What we see as chaos on the surface is hidden micro-level quality control QC. Banh Mi operates on a decentralized, just-in-time supply chain built on a personal network. It has a lower operating expenditure OPEX than any QSR model we have ever evaluated. And most importantly, it has an unreplicable cultural moat. I detailed the real-time flavor map and how they use big data from street food Vietnam transactions to tune the recipes. I talked about the Enzyme Technology that allowed them to scale up tradition. This is not a restaurant chain, I concluded. This is an anonymous food tech platform where culture is the intellectual property. If we invest in this recipe encoding technology and support the digitization of this network, we will own the backbone of the global Vietnamese food market. The investment proposal, the conversion, so here is my proposal. We do not invest $100 million in restaurant chain X. We are establishing a cultural transformation VC fund worth $150 million. The fund's objective: digitize and standardize Vietnamese family secrets. I looked straight into the camera, genuine emotion pouring out. We came to Vietnam looking for a McDonald's. But McDonald's is about uniformity. Banh Mi is about adaptability. We shouldn't try to make Banh Mi into McDonald's. We should invest to help Banh Mi retain its uniqueness while ensuring it is safe and efficient at every scale. This investment isn't about food. It's about strategy. It's about realizing that life in Vietnam isn't just what you see in a Vietnam vlog. It's an intelligently communal business system. After a prolonged silence, my CEO, who once told me I was too focused on safety and rules, spoke up. Mark, this is the riskiest proposal you've ever presented. And perhaps the smartest. You are betting on one thing. Community trust can create a more sustainable competitive advantage than any warehouse management software. I'm betting on culture, Chuck, I replied. Vietnamese culture created a business model that Wall Street couldn't see. And I don't want to miss that opportunity again. The decision was made. The $150 million fund was approved. I hadn't just changed my firm's business plan. I had changed my entire investment philosophy. The arrogance was gone, replaced by deep respect. I came to teach, but I ended up learning the most important lesson of my career right in the middle of a chaotic Ho Chi Minh street corner. Mark, personal note. I came to Vietnam looking for uniformity, but I found harmony. I looked for control, but I found trust. Banh Mi doesn't need to become us. We need to learn how to be as efficient and adaptive as it is. I had wired the first investment into what I now call the Banh Mi ecosystem. The $150 million fund was launched not to build a new chain of stores, but to finance recipe digitization technology and elevate the safe standards across the entire street food Vietnam network. This transformation wasn't just about money. It was a shift in how I perceived the world. The arrogance of an American investor who wanted to impose the Wall Street model on another nation had crumbled. On my final evening in Ho Chi Minh, I asked Hung to take me back to the very first Banh Mi stall, the one where I had scoffed at their disorganization. The stall was closed. But I sat down on a low plastic stool nearby under the yellow streetlight. Hung brought me a Banh Mi from another vendor, a perfect one in their local style. Mark reflecting, I spent my whole life seeking perfection, as defined by the West, 100% uniformity, predictable, controlled. I wanted every Banh Mi here to be identical to one in Paris or New York. I wanted the oven to be programmed by AI and the staff to adhere to Six Sigma procedures. I took a bite. The baguette crust was crispy, yet the inside was soft. The rich pâté flavored the savory sausage, and then the burst of fresh cilantro and chili. It was a combination of opposing elements, crispy and soft, rich and fresh, traditional and modern. This Banh Mi is not perfect in the way I defined it, Hung, I said, looking at the sandwich in my hand. It might be slightly burnt on one corner. The filling might be a little off-center, but that's what makes it strong. That imperfection is adaptability. You see, Mark Hung replied softly, if everything is 100% the same, then when one thing breaks, the whole system collapses. The Banh Mi supply chain may look messy, but precisely because each stall is an independent node, when one point runs into a problem, runs out of meat, out of vegetables, it instantly self-corrects by sourcing locally. It doesn't rely on a single control center. It is resilience built on trust and decentralization. An entire business philosophy unfolded before my eyes, wrapped in a sandwich costing less than $1. I had thought that to succeed, Vietnam needed to copy our model. But the real lesson was their strength lies in what we cannot copy. Mark philosophical statement, I came looking for gold, but I found a diamond. Gold is the flashy visible chain restaurants. Diamond is the hidden flexibility, ingenuity, and community network of Banh Mi. The true value of life in Vietnam is not in the GNP per capita written on paper, but in the resource optimization and human connection they have mastered over centuries. I looked at Hung. This is the biggest shock of my career. I came as the wise foreigner offering advice, but I leave as a student. I realized that humility is the most valuable currency in this emerging market. I decided I had to do something beyond the investment. I had to change how I communicated this story. Hung, when I go back, I won't just talk about the $150 million investment. I will talk about the Banh Mi. I will tell everyone on Wall Street, if you want to understand 21st century supply chain strategy, don't look at Amazon. Look at a Vietnamese woman making banh mi on a street corner. It wasn't about whether the banh mi was delicious. It was physical proof that culture and capital efficiency are not opposites. They are two sides of the same coin, a coin that Vietnam has been minting and using for decades, while the Western world was looking for expensive and complicated technological fixes. The core philosophical conclusion, the perfect banh mi, is not the one without flaws. It is the one that is in absolute balance between the crispy outer shell, the spirit of innovation, the readiness to integrate, and the soft inner filling tradition, community, and resilience. It is the symbol of Vietnam, a country that doesn't try to be a copy, but the most efficient and unique version of itself. And I, Mark, came here seeking control, but I found a lesson in the power of trust. I nodded to Hung. I was ready to leave now, not with disappointment, but with an entirely new investment strategy.